Hello and welcome back. By now you guys should have a very basic idea of what the anatomy of a simple application looks like. Well, it doesn't do much, but it did do something. It did compile and it did execute. But we did it all by hand, and that was no fun. As a matter of fact, if you tried to follow along, there is the possibility that your computer may not have been configured properly, where your computer could have found the C# compiler. And then you would have got all sorts of interesting errors and just been frustrated. The point of the last lesson was not to have you follow along, but just to show you, once again, the simple anatomy of an application. That's why we spent a good chunk of the time inside our whiteboard. Now, good news, in this lesson here, there will be no crazy writing from Buzz. That's right, we're not going to be using a whiteboard. Instead, we're going to be talking about Visual Studio. This is our IDE. This is where we're going to make the magic happen. We're going to get away from this text editor stuff. That's just a pain, wouldn't you say, Logan?
It certainly would be, especially if you need to get into troubleshooting.
Right.
You saw in the compiler it would give a line number for an error.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were to be working in a text editor, it would be up to you to find that line number and track down the error yourself. Whereas if you're inside of Visual Studio, inside of an IDE,
you get loads of help.
An error will be linked directly into the source file, so it'll jump you to the place you need to be.
Well, not only that, but as a beginner programmer, you become dependent on IntelliSense. I mean, it really does make life easy for you. As you're typing it out, it's logically calculating what can you, one, have access to, or what will you most likely be typing next. It's going to give you a list of all of these things.
Right, it'll give you a list of everything that's available and allow you to type fewer characters, because the word completion will let you just finish off the word without having to type the entire word.
So if you wanted to do 1,000,000 lines of code, it would be nice to only have to type out maybe 500,000.
Right. So if you get slick with IntelliSense, you don't actually have to type as much.
So yeah, and as you can see in here, when Logan was typing in Notepad earlier, putting a dot right there did not pop up any cool window full of options for us to select. So this is old school. IDEs, yeah, they're the way to go. Now, I keep using this term IDE. What do I mean when I say IDE? Well, an IDE is an integrated development environment. As we saw when we were working all the way back over here inside of Notepad, there was nothing integrated about this. We simply used a text editor to write out our code. We then brought up a command prompt, and we had to run the compiler and tell the compiler, hey, here's the file, compile this for us, and then we were able to execute. And as Logan said, if we ran into problems and the compiler came back and said, I don't think so, that's just not legal, well, then we've got to go and track down the problems. And in an application as small as this, piece of cake. But when you start dealing with something like, let's say, Hyperion, well, now you've got a whole bunch of different files. You have hundreds of lines of code. That can become a nightmare quickly. Well, using an integrated development environment, we have our editor, meaning a way of typing out our text, but a far more sophisticated editor than just Notepad. But we have our editor integrated with our compiler and our debugger. All these things are integrated into one area, providing a true solution for a programmer creating applications. And that just makes life easy. We write code, compile, or build the solution, and test it out. We have problems. The debugger's right there, ready to point us out inside the editor where we need to check. Very handy stuff. So once again, old school, let's get it out of the way. So for us to use Visual Studio, what I'd like to do is provide just a very generic overview. I don't want to get into every button, every menu option. That would just be insane here. But just a basic idea of what you're looking at. And then after we do that, I'm going to have Logan show you some of the cool things that you can do with documents. And then after we do that, some of the cool things that we can do with the editor. And then finally, maybe a little taste of some debugging action, even though this video is not about here's the debugger and everything that you can do with the debugger. It's to show you what, once again, is built into this IDE that makes programming so easy for us. And we'll wrap it all up by recreating quickly the Hello World application that we did in the last video, so that you've seen a very simple app written with our IDE. So, with Visual Studio, when you first launch it, you should have something that looks very similar to what I'm looking at right now. Let's just ignore all of the windows around here and our menus and toolbars for just a moment and focus on this area. This is our startup page. You can always bring the startup page back easily by hitting this button right up here, Start Page. Now, with the Start Page, let's go ahead and take a look at what we have available. Over on the left-hand side, we have Recent Projects. Very handy, so when you launch, Visual Studio, you just come right in here, click, go right into your project, keep working. How nice is that? Of course, if it isn't a recent project that you want to get to, you can just come down here to open. You can open up the project, or basically hunt through folders and find it and open it. You can create new projects. Coming down here to the Getting Started block, very handy for those of you that are new to programming with C#. Things like what's new in C# 2005 appear as links that you can click on, gain access to tons of information. But once again, for beginners, things like create your first application. That's old now. We've done it. Use a starter kit. How do I learn Visual C#? A lot of really good stuff here. And there's a lot of community stuff as well, as we're going to see as we work our way further into the Visual Studio IDE. So moving over here to the right, we have something that's very handy. Basically, it's the MSDN list of news or links related to Visual Studio and C#. You can see here, Visual Studio Express, code name. So the newest beta is out. Yes, we can go grab it and check it out, though we're not supporting it in this class. For Dummies books, now available. So you can see here, Thursday, 19th of April, the 5th of April, 6th of April. So we have this news that's basically being fed into the window right here. So you guys can always keep up with what Microsoft is announcing back over there on their site. Very handy. So with that out of the way, Logan, what I'd like to do is just come up here and close that document because, I'll look at it for a second or two, see if there's anything interesting that's been announced by Microsoft. Then I'll get it out of the way because we're in here to do some work. So before walking around the entire user interface, let's come up here to File, come all the way down to Recent Projects, and let's open up a recent project. Just so that our user interface comes to life, and it has done just that. Excellent. So now, let's just walk around and give a very quick peek at some of the things. At the top, in most applications inside of Windows, you will find, as I'm trying to draw a straight line, but I can't, a menu bar. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. You'll find such cool things as File, allowing you to create new projects, open File, close, etc. Moving over from there, we have things like Edit, allowing you to cut, copy, and paste stuff, along with a lot of other cool things such as selecting, going to, find and replace, etc. Moving over to View, there are all sorts of powerful windows found inside of Visual Studio, and from inside View, we can gain access to a lot of these. From code to things like Class View, Error List, Output, you're looking at a lot of these things right now, like the Solution Explorer, located over here to the right. So a very quick way to bring these guys back up. We've got different toolbars. Right now we have two toolbars that are available visibly to us. We have our standard and our text editor. And here's our toolbars back here. We'll talk more about that in just a second. Moving on over, we've got Refractor, a very cool way of doing some sophisticated renaming that we'll be talking about later and using quite often, I'm sure. Moving over to Project, things that are related to projects, add windows, user controls, classes, add new items, etc. Moving over from there, we have Build, an area that you have probably been often building your solution, rebuilding your solution, and then publishing, getting our stuff ready for distribution, which we'll be talking about later on. Moving over to Debug. Yes, the powerful debugger that I was talking about earlier. It is a powerful debugger that offers a lot of capabilities in tracking down those nasty bugs. Moving over from there, we have database-related stuff up under the Data menu option. Moving over to Tools. Interesting things dealing with tools. But the most important thing in here, I guess, before I just be all joking about it and move on, is Options, where Options will let you go in and set up some very handy things inside of the IDE itself. I mean, you can see right here, recent files, items shown in recent used lists, items shown in the Windows menu. Is it going to basically give us our documents in a tab documents, as you're seeing right now, multiple documents, all sorts of stuff's in here. If we want to go into fonts and colors, if we want to go into keyboard stuff, if you want to get into hotkeys, etc., you'll find it all in there. Let's go ahead and cancel out of there. So again, up underneath Tools. Coming over here to Window, some really nice stuff in here, and I'm going to have Logan actually demonstrate a good bit of this stuff before we're done with this video. Coming over to the Community, another very interesting feature inside of Visual Studio. You actually have the ability to ask a question, which we'll post a question out onto the community forums over at Microsoft. We can check the status of a question. We can send feedback. Once again, a bunch of handy community type buttons or options. And then up under Help, well, we all know what Help is, but they have broken it up to make things simple. How do I do particular things? Forget it. I just want to search. Let's look through the contents, the index, help favorites, etc. So a whole bunch of stuff related to help. So that is a very quick look at our menu bar. Moving down from the menu bar, we have got our toolbars. Right now we have 2 of them visible. If I right click here, you will see the same pop-up that we saw just a few minutes ago when I was showing you the toolbars that were available, standard and our text editor, which if we wanted to, we could turn one of those off and we can, of course, turn it back on. So if we come back over here and let's turn text editor back on. We also have the ability to come in here and drag these around so you can reposition them, you can drag them off, do whatever you need to make yourself happy. Visual Studio is so customizable, it's almost insane. But that's a good thing. So it should be able to accommodate most everyone. All right, so in here, whole bunch of things. A lot of these things are found up in your menus, but since they're things that you're probably going to be doing often, guess what? They're made available in toolbars so that you can get to them quickly. You know, new projects, saving, cutting, copy, pasting, running, etc. Okay? And let's see, anything else I want to talk about in there? Not really, because we're going to be hitting a lot of the functionality found up in the toolbars as we dig our way further and further through the programs in this course. Also, by right-clicking, you'll notice there are a lot of other toolbars that we can come in and add. And if you love the world of customization, you, of course, can come in here and add and remove buttons. We have our text editor and the ability to customize. Loads of functionality. From there, we'll move down, and let me give you a very quick overview. We have a documents area, and then we have a series of docked windows. Now in our documents area right now, you're looking at our editor that is providing, well, all of our code that we've been typing. But there is so much functionality built into this, it goes way beyond just black and white text. Okay, maybe not just black and white, there's green, there's blue, etc. But it goes way beyond just text, and Logan will be showing you some of these neat features here really soon. Let's see, moving on from there, let's go ahead and jump over here to the right real quick. So these dockable windows that I was talking about, this is only a few of them that are available in Visual Studio. We've got the Solution Explorer, an area that everyone has already been working with if they have followed along with Hyperion, where you're able to see basically the entire solution, your project, all of the classes involved, any type of references that have been added, etc. We also have the class view, where inside the class view we can come over here and we can start digging down into like Hyperion and open up the Hyperion namespace. And if we wanted to come down and open something like room and then just loads, or if we click on room, watch this, let's bring it all to life. So you can see as we're digging down, or we can start taking a look at all of our methods and fields and just all sorts of stuff. So again, really neat stuff that we're going to start using a lot later on. Let's go ahead and just jump back over here. So very powerful area, and I'm sure by now everyone's been using it. Moving on down, we have our properties window. Again, I'll just remind everybody back to that Windows application video that we did. It was the second Hello World where we had a button that bounced around the screen. Properties is going to show you just that. Properties. Right now we're looking at project properties, but recall when we were dealing with the visual design side of Visual Studio, we were able to click on a button and gain access to all the properties in here and set those properties. Very convenient. It's also able to work with events, etc. We'll be coming back to this a lot in the future. Moving over here, we're looking at the error list, and the error list is going to give us a bunch of errors that pop up as we're typing, because as you're typing, the line's not complete, so you're missing a terminator, doesn't know what you're thinking, etc., and it's going to start populating a lot of errors down here. That will disappear as you get done typing and the line is typed out right. And a lot of other errors that will pop up in here as you are learning how to program. Now, these are the main windows that you see docked at the moment, and a very quick 2-second explanation of each. But there are other windows. These are windows. We have the task list window, the output window. Okay, so let's go ahead and just jump that back over. The class view window. You kind of get the idea. And with that, Logan, I guess I can go ahead and have you take over real quick. If you want to just show some of the really nifty things that you can do. I guess first you want to start with, let's see, documents.
All right, well, just a quick overview of the documents area itself. What we mean by documents is anything open in the center area of the screen. Documents, when opened, will be tabbed up at the top, so you can navigate between all open documents by going through them tab by tab.
Okay.
And if you were to close a document, it gets removed from this tabbed area, and instead, if you need to go and open it again, you'll have to jump down to the Solution Explorer and reopen it.
So, yeah, it's not like you've just closed out, oh, heavens, it's gone forever. It's still available over there on the right. As a matter of fact, from time to time, you'll find Logan clicking over on the right-hand side in the Solution Explorer more than you'll find him digging through the tabs, just because he finds that easier to quickly grab something. Though, you also have the ability to click right here and find a listing of everything up that is open right now. So that's another really handy way to jump through stuff.
Right, and at the moment we have more documents open than you might want to have open at a time. We just have all these open so we can show things like the fact that you can get to, or you can access all open documents even if you've run out of room with the tabs.
Exactly.
One other nice thing you can do with the tabs themselves is you see that they tend to open all over on the left, and that means you might in one session open a different order of tabs than in another session. And if you like having two tabs nearby, if they're somehow related and you want to get back to them quickly, you can grab the tabs themselves and actually drag them around so you can simply reorder them. So if I wanted direction to appear all the way on the left, I could just drag it over. And
it's actually something I do a lot. When I'm jumping back and forth.
It makes things a lot easier to read because you might be working on player and you suddenly open direction, but you need to have direction by player, so you can move them next to each other and make it easier to navigate.
Precisely. Okay.
And coming down from that,
want to just show some of the navigation real quick? Maybe select room or something.
So moving over to.
So, no, what I was thinking is just show some of the navigation that we can do.
So some of the other things we have available within an editor itself is we have navigation for the types and the members found within a document. Because we divided all of our types into different actual files, you see we only have one type within the room file, and that is the Hyperion.room. Now, we also have a lot of members, so we can drop down our members list and see that we have a lot of different members inside of Room.
Yeah, we've got fields, and we've got methods, and we've got properties, all sorts of stuff.
And we can see these different types of members are indicated by icons. So we have a certain icon to indicate that these are methods versus description, which is a property, or the description variable itself. Along with that, we have a small lock icon that appears to certain members showing that they are private, or the absence of a lock showing that they are public.
Very handy. And again, it's code navigation. It's a very quick way to get to a particular area.
So now,
you want to go ahead? Let's just talk about the windows maybe. How about let's just start showing them how they can rearrange everything?
Let's take a look at the windows themselves. As we've seen, looking at a generally default layout, we had a bunch of windows docked. But you can do a lot more with the windows than just show and hide them.
Bring up the old toolbox.
Matter of fact, let's go to View and load up our toolbox so we have a window that we can play with.
Okay.
Now this window, like all the other windows currently open, is docked. Now, let's see, just some of the generic things you can do with a window. If we look at the icons as part of the window toolbar, we can close a window, and all that does is hide it. That means we'd have to go back to View, and we can reopen it or reshow it.
We can prove that it's hiding, too.
If we right-click on the title bar, you see Hide is listed, and Hide does the same thing as Close.
Exactly.
So let's bring that back up. Now, next to Close, we have an Auto-Hide icon, which looks like a staple. Or a pin. If we press that in, it turns the window into an auto-hiding window, which means it will slide off of the screen whenever we're not using it. So it could be useful if you need to access it a lot, but don't want it taking up a lot of room on the screen. And next to that, we have an icon that shows a list of available items, which is the same list as if you were to right-click.
Right.
So let's take a look now at some of the things that are given in this list. The auto-hide and hide were given by the icons. We also have floating, dockable, and tab document. And these are different modes we can select for this window. Let's take a look at what we have with dockable. You can see that, well, obviously we have the window docked. With it docked, we could resize it without having to otherwise move it around. Now let's take a look at what we would do if we wanted to dock this window somewhere else. If you grab the window by its title bar and begin to drag it, you can see that we can actually tear it off of that side, and now we see it as a floating window.
Yeah, and we see all these cool little things that just popped up.
So if we were to drop it while it's floating, it continues to float on its own. If we pick it up again, you notice as long as we are dragging a dockable window, we're given this set of icons. We have some along the top, like this one, and then we have a set in the center of the current item we're looking at, whether that be our document area or another window. And what these icons allow us to do is preview how this window will dock. So if I hold the window over the icon for the top dock, we can see this is the area that the window would fill if we were to dock it to the top, or the left side of the IDE, the bottom, or so on. Now, a window can also be docked within either another window or the document area, and that's what the center list of buttons are. You can see that as we highlight each of these, the document is giving a preview of where it will dock if we were to drop it.
Let's start with some big examples. Let's go ahead and just take that and have it take up the entire left-hand side.
All right. So let's drag it all the way to the left of the IDE and drop it. And there we have the toolbox showing almost, you could say, over the error list, because now the error list no longer takes up the entire bottom.
Right. Okay, cool. So let's tear that back off. Everything will expand automatically. Now, let's put it back where it originally was, just right beside the document area.
And that meant it needed to be docked to the left of, like you said, the document area, and there's our docking button for that.
Very nice. Now let's do some really interesting stuff with that. Let's go ahead and pull it back off, and how about dock it to the left of the Solution Explorer?
Okay. Now, you notice as we drag it over the Solution Explorer, the error or the location of this drop icon changes. Now we've got drop options for inside the Solution Explorer itself. So I could actually drop it into the left of the Solution Explorer. Or we could drag it back off and then...
If for whatever reason you'd want to do that.
Now, one other interesting thing is take note of these tabs that we have at the bottom of the Solution Explorer. We have two tabs right now for the Solution Explorer and the class view. So it's like these two windows are occupying the same area and are separated by using tabs. We can actually take any window we want and add it to those tabs. You see, if we hold it over the area and then select the middle icon, which is a picture of a window with tabs, we get a tab preview. And now if we drop, the toolbox is part of the tab set for this group of windows. So you can group windows together in tabs if you like.
Very cool, but be careful because there's a danger to this. Watch this. Click on Toolbox. Now you're thinking, I want to get the toolbox docked back to the left-hand side. So some people like to do this.
So what makes sense, let's grab the whole toolbox window and dock it back to the left. Now, what has happened to our Solution Explorer?
It go bye-bye.
Well, since we grabbed the window by its title bar, we're grabbing the entire window group. So now everything appears on the left, including the Solution Explorer and the class view.
That's right. So be careful with that. Let's go ahead and grab that entire Windows group and move it back over.
So I'm moving it over Properties, which has now occupied this entire area, and then I'll use the top to sub-dock that back in. Now, we want to move only our toolbox back out, so we'll grab it by the tab instead of the title bar. And if we do that, we get the toolbox by itself, and we can put it back in the desired location on the left side of the screen.
Excellent. Well, since it can be added as tabs, is there anywhere else you can add it as a tab?
Pretty much to any other window group. We could add it over Properties as a tab. We could add it to the list of tabs found next to the error list.
Nice.
Or wherever we want. So there we have our toolbox, or we could move it back to the side.
How about with the Documents area?
The Documents area itself? Okay, you want to move on now to the rest of the things we can do with Documents, or are you saying as a tab to Documents?
As a tab to Documents.
Documents won't...
Yeah, I thought it would.
It would. This is kind of like a special case, and let me show this and show the rest of the options we have for a tool window.
Fair enough.
Let me actually take this now and take it back off. So you see it changed from tab document, and this was the list I had available earlier. Let me change it back to dockable for a second, redock it.
Okay.
So we have it back in its familiar sense. Now, other ways we can show a window. If we right-click on it, of course, we've been focusing on everything you can do with dockable. We could also change it into floating. And this will make it float like a torn-off docked window, but it doesn't attempt to dock, so you can comfortably move it to whatever place on the screen you want, and it won't be constantly
You won't keep getting those indications of where you can dock it at, because it's not a dockable window.
And we also have tabbed document, so we can have this document show as a tab within the documents area. So there we have an actual code CS document, and then we have the toolbox docked in as though it was a tab. So if you, for some reason, have a large grid, or maybe you want to move the error list or even the task list. Actually, the task list kind of makes sense. If we take that to a tab document, there's our task list. So like, let's say we have a lot of tasks. Now we have it filling the screen, which could potentially be convenient.
Yeah, very much so. Especially in just a few minutes when we show them all the cool things they can do with documents.
But to keep our layout the same, I'm actually going to change this back to dockable. And it should remember where it was at, and it did. So we're set. Alright, so really that covers all of the different ways in which one could show a window. I'm actually going to change this back to dockable now and move it back to its left side.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I think we're done with it. So yeah, just straight up close it.
Alright, so from here you want to go ahead and move on to documents themselves, how we can split them up and...
Right, more advanced things that we could do when working with individual documents. Because you can see so far, it would seem that each of these documents, once loaded, are viewable in the document area and take up the entire document area. But there's interesting things we can do to further subdivide the document area itself. For example, let's say we wanted to view more than one document at a time. We could go up to Window and we could make a new horizontal or vertical tab group. What that will do, if you click on either of these, like let's click on horizontal, what that's done is it's taken the selected document, moved it to this new span or new group. So now I have what looks like two documents at the same time, each with their own tab bar. So I can tab through documents on the top. I only have one at the bottom, but if you remember before, we could actually drag documents around and drop them. You can actually drag them between the new groups now.
Power.
So we could have a group down here, and if you move all of the documents off of a group, that group simply goes away.
Very nice.
And again, you can do the same thing for a vertical tab group. Move things back and forth.
And you're not... go ahead, finish up. I'm sorry.
Which can be really handy for comparing code.
And what's also nice is you're not limited to just one split. Now, when you pick a direction to split, you've got to stick with that direction.
Right. For example, if I were to split horizontal, I cannot split... let me bring window back up. We don't have split vertical anymore. As a matter of fact, let me select this one so I have more than one thing. We have our new horizontal group. We don't have a new vertical group because we can't keep subdividing, as in we couldn't have a vertical group within a horizontal group or so on.
Right. And before you show another split, go ahead and kill that bottom one, and just to show them the more convenient way to split.
Well, instead of having to go up to the window menu, one could simply take a document, begin to drag it, and then drag it over either the horizontal or vertical scroll bar, and then that will start a split.
Now, that's cool stuff. Now you can split it again just to show them.
And like we were saying, we can't subdivide within these, but we can open more of the same type of split group. So if I take the text buffer now, I could open a new vertical tab group, and so on and so forth.
Or I could just drag as well. You could just continue doing that. So there you go. That's definitely neat stuff.
Now,
but there's more you can do with this.
There's a few other things you can do. You saw how having two horizontal groups or two vertical groups could be very useful for comparing code. What if you wanted to compare code within the same file? Well, you could actually open that file twice or more than once by selecting it, going to Window, and saying New Window with something selected. So I have Room selected. I'm going to click New Window, and now we have two documents. There are two document tabs for the same actual document. And the nice thing here is I could take this one, move it off, and make a new vertical group. And now I can be looking at Room. As a matter of fact, if I scroll over here, we have Room on the left side, which I could leave at the top, Room on the right side, and I could scroll to somewhere else or otherwise compare the same document.
Very handy.
So, and since we already have it here, I'm just going to close it off of this side, which will close the group. Now, one last way you can do that, if you want to split and look at two different places within the same document, you could also do a split as opposed to a tab group. Now, if you do a split, this is on a document-by-document basis. So right now we have the room split horizontally. If I move over to another document, that goes back to taking up the entire area because these aren't split.
So the room, we're actually viewing the code twice.
Right, we're viewing the same document twice, so we can go to different places within that.
Again, stuff that becomes very handy when you start dealing with very large amounts of code.
Right, for example, let's say you wanted to look at some variable because you were using it, and then you wanted to scroll down in the code where the variable itself was in use, and then you have these two areas shown at the same time. Now, since this was a split instead of a duplicate of this document, in order to remove this, I have to go up to Window and remove the split. So we take that out, and then we're back to having one document fill up the entire screen.
Very nice.
So other than that, I think that covers all the cool stuff you can do with different documents. We, of course, have things like the ability to switch to different documents from the window menu itself, or to close everything if we wanted.
Okay, so now let's go ahead and focus on the editor for just a minute. There's a few cool things that I think they should know about the editor.
And
let's start off with region blocks.
Okay. Let's actually grab a class that has a lot of stuff in it. Now, region blocks, at their simplest level, could be viewed as the fact that the editor will take anything that can be blocked, like a class or a method, and give you the ability to expand or collapse that method. So we could take title, for example. We could collapse that property. We could move on to a method and collapse the entire method. And when that's done, we still see the method name, but we see a little box showing what code is in it and indicating that we could expand it if we want to work on it.
Very nice. And everyone has already seen that we can create user-defined regions.
So something like, let's look at the property region. So we've defined a region ourselves, named it properties, and that means if we collapse this region, then we get a little block indicating that it's a region and that we can expand it, as well as what code it contains.
Okay. So how about some line revision marks? That's always neat stuff.
Right, if you look at the left side, right now we don't have any line revision marks because we haven't changed anything. If we were to go into our code and start moving things around, like I'm just going to throw a few return characters in, you notice as I change anything, or even if I go to another line and erase or rewrite a character, we see a color highlight begin to appear next to lines that have been changed.
Mm-hmm.
And we can see that that color right now is yellow, indicating that these changes have not been saved. If I were to save this document, these line revision marks will turn green, indicating that this document has changed since being opened, but these changes have been saved.
Right.
Now, if we were to close the document and reopen it, you can see that the line revision marks are gone because we haven't edited this document since opening it.
Okay.
So just to clean this up, I'm going to take our class and fix these line marks, and then save, and then that has our class back to its previous state.
Okay, very cool. Now, IntelliSense, we've kind of talked about it a few times. Give them a true intro to it and some of the neat things you can do with it.
Okay, I'm going to jump to a relatively clean area in code like the program itself, just so I can show this off a little bit more easily. Now, IntelliSense, of course, we've been seeing that a lot just in writing code. As we start to write pretty much anything, IntelliSense will pop open and will track what we're doing and try to give us help or possible things that we can use with it. Now, and the main purpose of IntelliSense is, again, just so that you don't have to do as much typing yourself and to make locating properties and members easier. You can see that if I start to type out console, or let me see, and if I get the shift key working for me, there we go. As we begin to type out a word, IntelliSense appears and gives us a list of things that could go along with what we've typed. We've typed out CON so far, so it's giving us a list of things that begin with CO or CON. And console was the last used one, so that's what's currently highlighted.
Now, most people want to just finish that word off by hitting enter, right?
Right, but if you hit enter, while it will finish the word, it gets rid of IntelliSense. So you basically told IntelliSense, yes, that's what I want, but I'm done with IntelliSense after that.
Okay, or is there a way around that, Logan?
What one could do, and I'll show this in just a second too. But what one could do, if you know that you want to continue using IntelliSense after you have it fill in this word, is you could, instead of using enter, you could use the next logical terminating character, which in this case is going to be dot, since we're going to have console dot some member or property.
Right.
So if I were to hit the period character, it will fill in the rest of the selected word, console, and then of course the dot that we typed, and it brings up IntelliSense with a list of members and properties for what we just typed. So that way you can continue using IntelliSense throughout writing an entire line of code. And right now it's got write line highlighted because that was what I used last. So if I begin to type out write or just leave it alone, I could hit the next logical terminating character again, which in this case isn't another dot, since write line itself is a method, not a property. So a logical character to follow a method, well, an opening parenthesis.
Okay.
So if we type an opening parenthesis, we still maintain our IntelliSense. Right now it's looking like a tooltip showing us possible parameters.
Which now we can use we can click on the little up and downs there.
Or we could use the arrow keys if we didn't want to move our hands from the keyboard.
And see all of the different configurations in which we can send parameters to it.
And then that's the very end. So after our parameters, if we end this off, then that's it for IntelliSense. Now, something interesting is to show how one would go about reinvoking IntelliSense if you were to accidentally drop the menu. For example, if I start to type out console, and for whatever reason I hit escape or I click somewhere else, and now IntelliSense is gone for this word, and I want to reinvoke it without having to retype the word. Well, I could go up to the toolbar, and if you have the text editor toolbar visible, you could go over to the left, and we have some things for IntelliSense. One of those being display word completion. So if we click that, so I've got my cursor currently over this incomplete word. If I click display word completion, IntelliSense returns and shows what we've got going so far. So then I could continue on. Now again, if we move over, so I hit a dot and get our member and property list. If I were to again lose IntelliSense somehow and want to reinvoke it, we have another button. We have display object member list. So if we click that, then it reinvokes it, and we can continue working.
A list of all of our members.
And finally, the last thing that we were using IntelliSense for was our parameter list, which again could be deselected, and you lose focus and lose that list. And we can reinvoke that by using the display parameter info button, and that will bring it back up. Now, there's also a list of useful keyboard shortcuts you can see just by holding the mouse over these. We have Control-K, followed by either L for the member list, P for the parameter list, or W for the word completion. So let's try that out. If we were typing the word console, we lose it somehow, we could hit Control-K, followed by W, and we get IntelliSense back. Again, for the member list, we could hit Control-K followed by L to show us our member list. And finally, we could hit Control-K followed by P to show our parameter list.
Very nice.
So again, many different ways of showing the different aspects of IntelliSense and re-invoking it should you have lost it and want it back.
Okay. Well, with that being demonstrated, if you want to kill those lines out right there, how about, while we've got Hyperion open, let's just do some very simple debugging. And we've already got a break line set in there right now, which we can take out, but it's put in a very good spot. The command processors, Logan and I were talking about before we started this video, felt that this would be an excellent place just to give a really quick demonstration of what debugging looks like inside our IDE. Because with the command processor, remember the way the Hyperion works is when you launch the game and you get a little bit of information at the title screen, it's going to start waiting for user input. And when we supply user input, what happens? Well, the process command method has got to process that data. So this is a really good place to go put a breakpoint to watch what's happening under the hood when we, as the user, input some information and hit enter.
All right, so let's drop a breakpoint inside of the command processor class. Let's drop it on the first line where we're taking our command and storing it in the command string.
And all you did was just simply left-click over there.
Right, or you could also use F9 to toggle. So if instead of clicking, if you were just moving around using the keyboard and you wanted to set a breakpoint, you could press F9 to toggle it, and then press F9 to toggle it again to make it go away.
Okay.
But I'm going to start a breakpoint on this first string, and let's run Hyperion. So you can see that nothing odd has happened yet. We have the breakpoint still sitting as it was in the background. We can begin a key, so we still haven't hit that breakpoint yet. Now, what would happen if we were to type move east and press enter? As soon as we press enter, we see the IDE comes to the foreground, and it has our breakpoint highlighted in yellow. Also, if you'll notice the where is it? Up here we have a debugging toolbar. As a matter of fact, a few things have changed. We've got this debugging toolbar, which I'm going to slide over to the side just a little so that we don't take up as much space here. But a debugging toolbar has appeared, and if we look at the bottom, we have some new windows. We have a locals window and a call stack window.
Okay.
Now, looking at what's going on here, what has happened is the execution has been paused or has been broken at this point.
Right.
So now we're stopped. We're no longer executing code.
And let me point this out real quick, just because I know you're about to start digging into it, but I just want to bring everybody's attention down here to locals, because this is just so handy for beginners when they start playing with this stuff. Take a look at this. Line. There's our parameter line coming in. But just by putting our mouse over it, we can see what's in line right now. We've got move east that's in it. And you can look down here quickly at line, which contains the value move east, and you can see the type as well. It's a string. And then you can see that we've got command and arguments that we're about to be dealing with as well, which right now they're both at null because we haven't actually processed this line. So we haven't populated command with anything. That's why it's set to null right now. And arguments is set to null because we haven't even got to this line. We're still sitting up here on this line. Okay, I'm done, Logan.
Okay. So now that the program has stopped, we could do a few things. We could simply continue running the program as normal and do nothing more with the debugging. We could stop execution altogether. Like, for example, if we got to this point and realized that there was some error, for example, line contained the wrong data and we needed to make a code change, we could stop entirely and go back to editing. Or we could completely restart the program and start from the beginning. But what I want to do here, instead of continuing or stopping completely, is let's show how you could actually follow the execution of your program line by line now. If we go over back to the debugging toolbar, we see we have a few other icons next to the execution control. We have step into, step over, and step out. If we hit the step over, what that means is to more or less execute the current line, but don't bother going deeper into it because there could be other...
well, there is right there. You're looking at string command equals text util. So now we've got to go into that object, into the extract method, send that information in. So how deep do we want to go with our trace? Basically.
Exactly.
And we don't want to go that deep. We just want to focus on process command right here.
So if we wanted to have it continue, execute this line, continue over it, we could press the step over button, which of course could be used, or could also use the F10
Watch your
hotkey.
locals when he does this.
Alright, so I'm going to click step over. We can see that the execution is now on the line below it. And if we look at our locals, what's just happened? The command variable now contains the text move, and it's even highlighted red to indicate that it just changed.
Sweet.
So now we could hit step over again, and now arguments has been filled. So at this point you can see our incoming line was move space east, And then after executing the extract command and extract arguments method from text utils, we filled a command variable with our command and our arguments variable with our arguments.
And you'll notice there's hotkeys associated with these step over and step into and step out. So in this case, Logan can just hit F10 and we can just kind of walk through and watch what's happening.
Okay. So right now we're sitting at the check where we decide to see if the command is a direction or not. So if we press F10, well, it looks like that check returned false.
Meaning that he didn't just type in east.
Exactly. So instead we drop down to the else block, and we can see that we are just now entering else. So if I hit F10, we move on to our switch. And our switch is going to make a decision based on what is contained in command. If I press F10 again, we jump into the move case, because of course command contains move, as we can see here. So now we're at the move case, and we're at the part where the player handles the arguments, which is east.
Excellent. So that's good enough, really. I mean, yeah, no reason to keep following it.
And we can continue the...
So at this point, if you just go and hit play, you can show them that we'll have execution going again. Bink, and bring it up. There it is. And now we've moved east. What shall I do? Now, of course, at this point, if Logan hits, types anything, look, it's going to bring us right back up to the process command method because that's where we're at again.
Right, that breakpoint stays in effect until you get rid of it. And if I wanted to, I could just toggle the breakpoint without having to close the or stop the execution of the application. I could just click on the breakpoint itself, and that's taken it away. So now if I were to continue, bring Hyperion back, and now type some move command again, or look, you can see now we're not breaking anymore because I've removed the breakpoint.
Precisely. Okay, Logan, I think that's good enough for just a really quick demonstration of using the debugger. Really quick. Guys, hopefully you've created the Hyperion project, and if you have, try it out. Just try this. Try it with the process command. Play with F10. Get a feel for it. Actually step into some of these things and watch what happens as you dive deeper and deeper into code. We'll be spending a little bit of time with the debugger a little bit later as it becomes much more important for this course. But right now, that pretty much does it. So let's go ahead and exit out of this, Logan. And I'm going to look at my list real quick. I think that's everything I wanted to have demonstrated in regards to a quick overview of the Visual Studio IDE. And at this point, let's go ahead and just walk through making our very simple application, only because I promised at the very beginning we would do it. But now we're going to do it with an IDE as opposed to Notepad. So here we are going to create another Hello World app.
Just see the creation of that app through the eyes of Visual Studio instead of from Notepad.
So that everybody now, knowing what to look for with IntelliSense, will just see the whole IDE coming to life and assisting Logan as he's working his way through the creation of it.
All right, we're done with Hyperion, so I'm simply going to go to File and close the solution.
Okay.
And let's begin a new project. Now, to make this as close to the Notepad method as possible, I'm actually going to start this as an empty project instead of as a console app, so that we don't have anything predefined for us. So empty project, I'll leave it project 1, that's fine for this demonstration. Hit OK, and here we are. Visual Studio is still looking relatively empty, except for the Solution Explorer. We see we have our project 1, and no files inside.
We have no classes this time around.
So let's make a file. Let's add a file to our project. I'll right-click on Project, go to Add, we'll add a new item. Now instead of directly adding a class, I'm simply going to add a code file. Now I'm going to name this file helloworld.cs to mimic what we had done over in Windows, or just at that folder. So helloworld.cs, we'll add that in, and there we go.
By Logan doing that as opposed to adding a class, no class template came in here. It's just a bare empty file.
So we have a blank document to start working in. So let's start working. Let's retype the program we had from Notepad. And we'll begin with our using that we added at the end, where we were using system, so we don't always have to use the fully qualified name. And that gets our using in. Now let's begin the class for Hello World. So class Hello World. Throw some blocking in. And already the editor is helping out a lot with some automatic tabbing, so we don't have to worry about the odd Notepad tabs. And
not to mention color coding.
Yeah, so we have everything color-coded, so we could very easily tell if we had mistyped using, because if we miss a letter, then we don't have
keywords are in blue, so that's not blue, so something's definitely messed up. Plus, down at the bottom in our error list window, you've got a problem.
So let's fix that back up. All right, back to the Hello World class. Let's add in.
Of course, if we were doing that in Notepad, you wouldn't have got any of that information.
You would have absolutely no indication until you attempted to compile. All right, let's add in some methods. First, our main method. This will be a static method, returns nothing, and it is called main. And we'll take in no parameters. So we'll block that in. And let me block in the other method as well, since I'll need that inside of main. This will be a static void, and it's called say hello. Alright, that has our methods. Let's go back to main and fill in what main has to do. The first thing we do, of course, is we tell main to write out get ready. So we need to access our console. So if I begin to type out console, there we go. That's what we want. IntelliSense now has console highlighted. So I could hit dot, bring up the member list. Right line was what I used last, so I could just go ahead without typing anything, type an open parenthesis, and that fills in right line before my opening parenthesis. And now I'm looking at the parameters that console.WriteLine can accept.
Wow, Logan, you're typing a fraction of the characters you were typing over in Notepad.
Yeah, for sure. I've typed the 3 letters and a few symbols. All right. Now let's actually look through WriteLine and the parameters accepted by WriteLine. If I hit down a few times, we can have a Boolean value, no. Char value, still no. Char buffer, so on and so on and so on. And we see, ooh, a string. There, that's better. So we can put in a string value like get ready. 3 dots.
Of course, they don't need to be confused thinking that they have to jump through all of those.
Right, I was just saying if you were curious as to what
exactly
a method may take as parameters, you could sit there and look through the different ones and see different variations of things that method will accept.
Precisely.
Alright, after we show the get ready message, then we call upon the say hello method. You just write out say hello. IntelliSense has picked up on it, so I can just do the opening and closing parenthesis. We've got say hello in place. And now after that we need to write out another line saying that we're back in the main method. So again, console, so we're com.WriteLine, so fine, open parenthesis, and what do we want to say? Well, we could say we are back in the main method. And finish that off. Alright, I think that takes care of the main method. Let's finish off our say hello method, and its job is to simply write out the words hello world. So we'll begin console dot WriteLine, so open parenthesis, and we want to write out hello world. Close that off, and I believe that does it for our simple program.
Okay, and it's going to be a little bit different here, though. We do need to add something, and go ahead and show. If you run it, what happens?
Well, if we run it now,
dink dink.
Right, because we're not sitting at the console. In the console we can run it, have the program end and go away, but the console keeps its buffer history.
That's right.
Here, the console window itself opens and then goes away after it closes.
So you can correct this real quick. So here's our one difference from the original app. This is just to hold this open for us.
So console.read line.
Okay, and now if we build and run, hello, I say get ready, hello world, and we are back in the main method. Excellent. And go ahead and hit enter key. So there's our line, and we're out. Now, we could wrap things up right here, but let's go another 30 seconds. Logan, how about set a breakpoint in there? You want to try to walk through this real quick?
Sure. I could set a breakpoint at the first thing we do inside of main.
Okay, sounds excellent. So we just kind of follow execution of this simple program.
All right, let's run. So we run, and before we see the window flicker, but then it goes away, the IDE comes forward to show that we have hit our breakpoint inside of main, our first line.
So there's where we're at the moment.
All right, so I'll hit F10 to step over and move on to the next line, where we're at say hello.
Okay.
Now at this point, we could step over this, which should continue on in a linear fashion. So if we step over, then we get back to our right line, our read line. Now if I keep hitting F10, let's see.
And we're back, because that's the end of it. Let's go ahead and close it. Now let's go back through and step into.
All right, so if we run again, leaving this breakpoint in place, we'll run, we hit our breakpoint, so we'll step over F10. Now let's step into this. So I'll press F11.
So this is where execution goes. Starts right here.
So if I press F10, we can jump down to the line. F10, we're at the end. F10 again, so if I hit step over, well, there's nothing left to step over, so we end up going back.
Right.
And now if I hit step over, and so on and so forth.
And just a real quick, go ahead and end it real quick. I'm going to get you to run it one more time, if you don't mind.
Okay. And let's run again.
So take a look at this. While we're not getting into this right now, I did mention yesterday when we were kind of tracing it out in Photoshop that it remembers where it needs to return back to and all.
Right.
We've got our stack. Here's our call stack. So Logan, go ahead and step down one, then step into say hello. Watch the call stack. So look at this, where we're at the moment inside Say Hello. Look at this, where we need to return back to.
So right now, even without looking at the code, you can see just by looking at the call stack, once we're done with Say Hello, where are we going to return to? Well, we're going to return to
back
Hello
to
World's main.
Line 8, and plus this. So anyways, I just wanted to point that out real quick. Good stuff.
So if we jump, we can see that we do in fact at the end, and then that's it.
So, you know, guys, I really encourage you to type this very simple application in and then play with it. Just like we're showing you here. Try the debugger out. Just get a feel for it. Use the Hyperion project. Play around with some of the different things that Logan has shown you in regards to how Visual Studio works for you to make life easier while coding. So with that, that's pretty much going to wrap up this lesson, demonstrating everything that we set out to do. I hope by now you have at least a little bit better idea of what an integrated development environment is and what it provides the programmer to make life easier. And that's pretty much going to wrap it up. Thanks a lot, guys.